Welcome to a training video of the Barbados Severance Pay screen in PayPak Professional 4.0. This screen is used to calculate and prepare severance pay amounts for employees in Barbados. Our software includes several other severance pay screens for other countries, which all work in a similar manner, with each one tailored to the rules and regulations for that particular country. So let's get started and show you how it works. The Barbados Severance Pay screen is found under the Reports section of the menu, inside Standard Reports. Now I could click down here, go to B, for example, and there is Barbados Severance Pay. I want to show you using the search option here. This is a list of the 6 countries for whom we currently have severance pay calculation screens: Barbados, Dominica, Grenada, Guyana, St. Lucia, and St. Vincent. In this demo, we will be looking at severance pay for Barbados. This is the Barbados Severance Pay screen. Let's start with a look at the layout of the screen, then I will show you how it works. At the top you have some displays of the first NS report and the last NS report. NS reports are tied to severance pay in Barbados because the insurable earnings for severance pay are based, the NS calculations is based on the insurable earnings for NIS. And then there's the number of weeks reported. Over to the right, we have some totals. The main part of the screen has 3 tabs: a formula section, which deals with the severance pay formulas, an employee section, which will list the employees who are severed and allow you to adjust their entries if necessary, and export section, which has options for exporting the calculated severance pay to a file which can then be imported as a batch. At the bottom of the screen, there are a number of buttons which control various functions of this screen. So let's get started. The first NS report and the last NS report, these are the NS reports which the system detects in your database. So in this particular case, there are NIS reports from January 2011 up to February of 2021. The total number of weeks reported is 174 for this particular database. Now, the severance pay rules for Barbados require that you look at 104 insurable weeks. This database has 174, which means that it can be used to calculate the full amount of the severance, provided that all of those weeks are fully reported in that period here. In cases where you may have only the past year's data, 104 weeks is 2 years. You may have purchased PayPak a year ago and you only have 52 weeks of information. So what do? What you do is you can get the last year's data from PayPak for the period that you've been using it and preparing your NIS reports, and the previous year you have to get that information, prepare it, and manually enter it into the screen. So let's just recap that again. Severance pay calculation requires the last 2 years of NIS reports information because it uses the insurable earnings, which have a maximum. So you do not pay the severance pay on the full earnings which a person works for if they work above the NIS maximum. The severance pay currently is only calculated based on the NIS maximum, which in our software we get that from the NIS reports. So if you only have the past year and you're required to get the past 2 years information to work out an average of what the employee would have worked for. So if PayPak only has the past year, you need to get that information from wherever you were doing your payroll before. If you have it in an Excel spreadsheet, if you have it in another payroll package, if you have it on a report somewhere, you need to calculate that total for the first year and for each employee, and those totals will be entered in the employee section here along with the amount which is calculated by PayPak for the second year. So that's how this works. Over here you have NS verified, NS not verified, and the number of employees. This is a check which the system makes to verify that the employee has NIS report, information prepared for them. The total would be the total of the severance pay. So we next go to the formula. This is the current formulas for Barbados. You must be working for 2 years. That's the minimum years. And the insurable weeks is 104 weeks, which, as I said, is 2 years. You could override these in case that the law changes or the rules change and you don't have the software update yet. But for the time being, you do not want to be changing these options here, or indeed here. This is the number of years the employees have worked. So if you worked for up to 10 years, you get 2.5 weeks pay, your average pay basically, for each year you've worked, for each of those 10 years. Above that, you get 2.5 for each of the first 10 years, plus 3 weeks for each year between 11 years and 20 years, and then the maximum would be 3.5 weeks for any years between 21 to 33 years. So a person who's worked for 30 years, they would get 10 at 2.5. They would get another 10 at 3. It's the difference between the number here and the number here. And if they work for 30 years, they would get another 10 at 3.5. 33 years is the maximum. Above that, there's nothing. So it's possible for you to come in here and change this section as well if the rules changed. At present, this is what they are, so you probably should not be tampering with this or changing it in any way. So that's the formula section. That's the formula section of the screen. Next tab is the employees, and this is a list of employees who are being severed. To select employees, you have to click on the Add button at the bottom of the screen. So I'm going to click on the Add button, and up comes an option to select employees. I could select them by I can select all of them. I can select them by category. I can select by department. I can select by payroll set. I'm just going to choose all, and the status can be active or inactive. It defaults to all. Active would be employees who are in the payroll not yet marked as severed. Inactive would be the ones who've left already. So we leave it at all for this purpose of what we're doing today. I then click on the display button, and here's my list of 125 employees. Now we're not going to sever all of them. We've got the ID, the name. For the purpose of this demo, these names have been somewhat obscured. The date they started, the date they finished, and the number of years they worked. And I'm going to sort this by the number of years. Click again, and we have the oldest person, employee 60, who's worked for 48 years, started on the 1st of December 1962, finished the 31st of December 2010, 48 years completed. And what you would do here, we're going to select the ones we want to sever, and we're going to sever the first few in here. Let's also get some who've worked for 3 years. Anyone who's worked for 3 years, anything over 2 years. Okay, fine. So these are the ones who are going to be severed. So that's 11 of 125 employees. If you wanted to sever everyone, you could have clicked on the All button here, and it would select the employees, even if it selected someone whose years is less than 2. You could edit that in the you can edit the years and the dates in case these years here are incorrect. You could have a person, for example, employee 40, who does not have a date started. So let's show you what you do in that case, because the date started record comes from the employee profile. So there may be some employees for whom a date started was never entered. So let's select that one. So we have 12 employees. We're now ready to add these employees with the Add button. If you wanted everyone, as I said, you click on All. None would turn everyone off. Deselect everyone. There's an Invert button. There is the Video button to this video, and there's the Exit screen. So we click on Add, and we are now returned to the employee screen, which is now filled out with the employee information. The name, the date started, the date severed, the years. There's some columns for NS information which will come up shortly once we click the Calculate button. Now, in this case, these employees had the date when they left. And some of these are older dates. Let's assume that we were severing everyone on the end of February 2021. If I wanted to do that, I would override here and just change the date to say it's a long time ago that this person left. So let's go to 2021. And let's go to the end of February. Let's say it was the 28th of February. Okay. I then have the option to say, do you want to change the remaining severance dates? Now, this option will be used if your employees had not left yet. In that case, when this first came out, those dates were there as you saw. So now we have the dates which the employees left. They're all the same. We severed everyone on the 28th of February, and it calculates the number of years here. So that's one option I could use if we're severing everyone at one point in time. This person here who did not have a date in their employee profile, if I know that date, I can now come here and key it in. So let's say that they started in the year 2000 on July the 19th. That's 20 years for them. So although that date was not in their employee profile, I can overwrite it and key it in here. And also, if any of these dates here were inaccurate or incorrect, they could be corrected at this point in time. So we now have, for everyone, the number of years for which they were employed. Now, there's some other columns here for NIS information. And to get that information, I'm going to click on the Calculate button. And it goes through and it does a calculation. But I'm not getting any insurable totals here, because this insurable total would be what they've worked for in the time that they were employed. Now, the problem here is I set this severance date to a date long after they actually left the company, so there would be no NIS records in there for them for 2019, say, to 2021. So I'll turn these off in this case. Let's say this person, let's say that you were severed on 11th of January 2013. Okay, so in this case we will use the dates that they were actually left the company. Okay, if they were still active, you would have seen information come up in there for 2021 in here, because there would have been NS reports for them. So let's calculate again, and now we have some information, but it's only for some of them. Reason for that is this database had PayPak records. It started from 2011, I believe, this particular database. So there's no information, no NIS information in there before 2011, which, as I mentioned, remember I mentioned at the start of the demo that you may have purchased PayPak a year ago and you only have 1 year's information, the past year's information in PayPak. You don't have the other year. So for these other employees here whose NIS weeks say 0, or it may say less than 104. This is 104, this is 104, this is 44, this is 0. For those employees, what you can do is the insurable adjustment column is where you would enter their insurable earnings for the past 2 years, 104 weeks before they were severed. So let's say for this person it was $48,000. For this person it was $51,125. This person had 35 weeks only in PayPak, so let's say that they had another $45,000 from previous periods. This person, there's only 65 NIS weeks in the system for them. Let's give them another $38,500 in earnings. This person only had 5 NIS weeks. Let's give them $40,000. This person had 17. Let's make that 85,000 more. This person had none. Let's give them 101,250. This person had 44. So let's give them 25,000. And this person has 104 within PayPak, so there should be no need to add anything additional in there for them. Although there may be periods when employees were on layoff, and well, there may not be 104 weeks in that case too. But if a person was on layoff, the rules are that you can work out an average of what they would have worked for if they had been employed, and you would put that figure in here so that you get a full average for the 104 weeks. So we'll just leave that one alone. This person here will give you 125, 180.56. This one is 104 weeks as well, and this person here, let's say that you were 79,536. Good. So we now have insurable earnings totals for everyone. If you look at the totals, you'll see this one is the adjustment. There was no insurable subtotal here. So this 48 is that total. This 51 is that total. This 75 is the 30 from PayPak plus the 45 adjustment, and so on and so forth. There is a weekly average column. Now, after you have entered the amounts, you see this label will appear. Changes have been made. Please recalculate. So after you've entered anything manually in here, you click the calculate button again. Take a look at the average, the weekly average column. Click on calculate, and we have some weekly averages. Okay, this is the average. It takes this number and divides it by 104 to get the weekly average. There's a calculation here of the number of severance weeks, and there's a severance pay total in this column right here. This is what the totals will work out to be, and the full total there is 255,372.15. That's the sum. All the employees have been verified, all 12 of them. They've passed NS verification, even though this one has no, even though they have no NS weeks. The verified means that it's being checked. So 0 doesn't mean they're not verified. 0 means the software has checked, found their record, the NS profile information, and there are no NS weeks for the selected severance period. Now, the next step would be you can print this information for safekeeping, because you can create a batch from it. So it would be a good idea to print it, which we'll do now. Print, preview, and here is the report, which you can keep as your proof of how the calculations were done. It shows the minimum years at the top, it shows the insurable weeks, the names of the employees and the totals calculated, and the formula for the years worked is at the bottom of the page. As with the special payments report and the change rates reports, they can be saved as PDF files, placed in a folder for future reference in case you need to look back at how the calculation was done, in case there's any dispute or disagreement later on, because as you know, severance pay can be a contentious issue. So I would recommend that you if you want to print it and file it, you can do that, but I'd also recommend that you save it as a PDF document somewhere, maybe on your server, on a secure location somewhere that you can look back at it. So that's the report, and the next step is to export these entries to a file. This is optional because some persons may just use that report to get these totals and work out the calculations manually, key it in manually when they're doing the payment. But you can also have PayPak create a file for you which will generate a batch. You can import that using the import gross pay feature. The first option is the job type. You can use the employee default job type if your employee's job types. They have different job types. Or if you want the severance pay to go to a particular job type, you can select it from the list. In this case, I'll use the employee default job types. There's a pay rate, and we have one called severance, which should probably be the default you want to use. There's a reference, which is optional. You can type a reference if you want. It's optional. There is a checkbox for taxable, which in this case this is off. But if for some reason there was to be some sort of tax on the severance pay, you would tick that. And then you have the format which you're exporting to. And we have the 4 formats which PayPak 4 can import. Excel 2007, Excel 2003, comma separated, CSV, or tab delimited TXT. With an option here of whether you wish to add data headers or not. And you would select this based on your options in your import gross pay screen. So then you click export, and that would create the file for you, which you save to some folder, some pre-selected folder, and then you can import it, as I mentioned, using the import gross pay screen. The new button clears the screen. The refresh button refreshes the list of pay rates and job types and whatnot. The settings button will save these settings here for export, as well as the formula options if you overrode any of these formulas. The reset button will clear the formulas, the settings, the saved settings. And the video button here will give you this video. Click on it, it opens your browser, and you get the YouTube video which explains the various steps of the Barbados Severance Pay screen. So that is basically it. If you want to get more information on importing the file which is being exported, we will have a video of the import gross pay screen, which you can look at that and get the details of how that works, or you can contact one of our support staff until that video is released. So that's it. Thank you for your time, and it's been a pleasure as always. See you again for the next training video. Goodbye.